Hello, magical experimenters. Taylor Ellwood here, and welcome to today's Magical Experiments podcast, where we're going to be talking about the commonalities of magic. And really, what I want to do is I want to explore how different magical systems are more alike than people give them credit for, and why sometimes what keeps people from learning effectively is the subjective bias that people bring. So recently I was taking a class, um, and I asked a question about sigils and magic and about Austin Osman Spare and how Austin Osman Spare's ideas and concepts might apply to William G. Gray's work. And the teacher of the class didn't really have an answer for me, in part because when it boiled down to it, he was really focused in on his system. And I get it. And I have mad props and respect for him. He's an amazing teacher. And the truth of the matter is I already had the answer myself, but I wanted his take on it. And his take was basically like, well, this particular system of magic isn't chaos magic, so there's really no common theme here. And here's what I've found over the years. I've studied a lot of different magical systems and traditions. I mean, I've studied Tantra, I've studied Taoist magic, I've studied chaos magic, I've studied different versions and flavors of Western ceremonial and ritual magic. I've studied elemental hermeticism. I'm studying astrology right now. Um, I've studied a lot of inner alchemical practices, Doge-Chin, neo-shamanic techniques. And that's not even including all the different systems of magic that I've come up with on my own over the years. And, okay, did that really go? How much was that? Well, we'll go with it. Okay, yeah, I'm doing something also, just in all honesty, I'm also trying to record this on Instagram at the same time. So I was doing a little a sneak peek video. Anyway, let's get back to the matter at hand. You guys don't want to hear about that. So what we want to keep in mind is that when we look at different systems of magic, there are ultimately common themes about them. And in the case of Austin Osman Spare, he has this, I was reading about this in this book called The Sacred Alignments and Sigils. And I already am familiar with Austin Osman Spare, but he had some really good explanations of Spare's neither principle and how Spare's sigil work involved the subconscious programming. And so I thought this was interesting because in Magical Ritual Methods by William G. Gray, and also Inner Traditions of Magic, but more so Magical Ritual Methods, he ends up talking a lot about invocation and how the act of invocation is, there's a component where you are making your inner self receptive to what you are calling upon through the vocalization of the invocation. So basically you're prepping your subconscious in order to connect with the spirit. I thought, well, this is interesting because Spare's sigil work and ideas around how sigils work is similar. It's prepping the interior of the person's mind, for lack of better phrasing, and the subconscious, and it's aligning it with stated desires and realities in order to achieve specific outcomes. And this to me seems very powerful. So when I look at Spare's chaos magic and sigil magic methods, I think along these lines, like how can we align the internal reality, the interior reality with the, with desired outcomes. And I think, oh, here's William G. Gray's invocation technique where you're vocalizing the name of a spirit. You could vocalize a sigil and create a similar receptivity, and it would be another way to work with the sigil. So thinking along these lines, and part of this is because I'm also getting ready to research and write a book on sigil magic. I've got some sigil techniques I've shared, and I'll be sharing them again in this book, but I'll also be sharing some other thoughts and ideas and practices around sigils, both in relationship to modern sigil work through chaos magic and also spirit work. So I've kind of combined these together, and I have some very interesting ideas I want to explore. So I was thinking, like, what would this other person say about the idea of these two different authors and their perspectives? And he was basically like, well, William G. Gray didn't like Austin Osman Spare and didn't think much of his work. And what it really revealed to me was more about how someone's ego can get in the way of actually learning and developing their own magical practice. And I think it's a real shame because the practice of magic, if we're really going to advance ourselves, we have to be willing to break out of the ego. And in the case of William G. Gray, he had this ego around Austin Osman Spare. He didn't think much of Austin Osman Spare's methods or the fact that he was drawn on different traditions that fell outside of traditional Western magic. And yet, if he had been curious and open, he might have discovered some very interesting parallels that would have advanced his own work significantly. And he could have shared that with Spare, and they could have dialogued and had some back and forth. That didn't happen. My own approach to magic has always been based around the evolution of magic. And part of how you evolve magic is you find where there are common elements or themes. Now, I look for common elements and themes in magic, not just within different magical systems and traditions, but I also look at it in regards to non-occult disciplines. And anyone who's viewed these videos has seen me talk about that a fair amount. Because what I find is that there are certain principles that can be applied across the board. And this isn't to say that there isn't an interpretive aspect to this, because there definitely is. I'm interpreting these specific principles and ideas and concepts in a way that allows me to take them and apply them to, a different system of magic, or take a different discipline that's non-occult and apply it to magic in order to get results. But the key question that I always ask is, am I getting results? And if the answer is that yes, I am getting results, then really it doesn't really frickin' matter to me that it's a non-occult discipline and that, well, we wouldn't actually do that. Well, why wouldn't we do that? Well, we wouldn't do that because so-and-so said we shouldn't, or because this is a magical system and tradition and it should only be worked with in this way. Now, I will grant the argument that if you're no longer working within a specific system in the way that that system is set up, then you're not really working in that system anymore. You've made it into something else, and that's true. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I have a couple different magical traditions that I'm a part of, but the direction that I've taken those magical traditions, some of that, I mean, I can definitely say that my mentors would be like, well, what you're doing no longer fits within our magical system or tradition and isn't part of it. You're drawing on elements of it, but you're choosing to take it and use it in a way that we wouldn't approve of. Okay, that's your choice. I think, though, it's a shortcoming in a lot of ways. And it's what prevents the evolution of magical work and practice and theory. And I'm not going to judge anyone for that, because at the end of the day, each person has to work within their own given parameters. And I mean, I can safely say that in the case of the person I asked the question of originally, he's been working within the system for 50 years and he's done some amazing work within his system. And he's continuing to evolve that system within the specific constraints of the system. And you know what? I respect and honor that, because that is a lot of work right there. And at the same time, I know in my particular case, being the magical experimenter that I am, that I'll play ball within a given system, but then I'll also start looking at how I can improve upon that system, or I can find interesting parallels or take it in some different directions. And sometimes that'll involve non-occult disciplines. And the reason for that will be because it makes it more personal, and powerful for me. I mean, look, at the end of the day, magic is subjective in a very real sense. You have a subjective approach to how magic works. And I think that people need to be honest about that and be like, yeah, you know what? There is a subjective bias here. I have my own subjective bias in all of this. My subjective bias is that I think that you can take different systems of magic and blend them together in order to get better results. I think that you can take non-occult disciplines and blend them together and get better results with magic. Now, some people would call that chaos magic. I don't. I call it magical experiments because that's what it really is. And I kind of see chaos. My opinion of modern chaos magic is that modern chaos magic has come to a dead end for the most part. It hasn't significantly evolved in any way, shape, or form in the last 20 or so years. It's basically the same old, same old, same old. And I keep up on this stuff, so I feel confident in saying that. Some people will probably disagree, and fair enough. I don't really care. I've got no skin in the game on that argument because I'm busy doing my own work. But I think that for the most part, when we look at the commonalities of magic, we want to find the intersections where we can say there is a clear linkage here. And as a result, what we end up getting are some very interesting nuances to magic. So in the case of what I shared earlier with William G. Gray and Austin Osman Spare, if I'm familiar with both of their theories and ideas and their processes, I can take those and I can blend them together and come up with something that evolves both practices. And the irony of it all is that really when I look at Gray's work, even moving forward, I see a lot of commonalities with Austin Osman Spare. I mean, I would say that that he would probably be turning over in his grave right now. But there's a lot of his work that can be drawn on and used in chaos magic, and probably has been in some ways. And I don't think that that's like a bad thing. I just think it's somebody looking at it and saying, how could I take this and take it outside of the original wrapper that it's in and apply it in a meaningful and powerful way. So I think it's really important to recognize that and remember it, and then go from there. Frayed cordage has the strands leading to the rope core. Yeah. Now, before you guys all go, I want to make a couple announcements here. I'm restarting my podcast. It's available on my Substack. If you don't know where Substack is, you can click the link below, which should in the show notes should get you over there to Substack. And that's kind of my new site where I share some of my content, not all of my content, but some content, including some content that is behind a paywall. And the podcast is going to be there. That's not going to be these videos. It's going to be me interviewing other occult authors and different interesting people that I find fascinating, and us having like a shared conversation about magical topics and ideas and practices. But keep that in mind if you're interested. Second, I am looking at starting up. I'll be continuing to offer some classes that are longer in length, but I'm looking at starting up a once a month class that's for like an hour or two on a weekend that you could sign up for on a specific topic. So I'm going to be planning on that probably in July or August. And keep your eyes open for that if you're interested in it. And that gives you a chance to work with me directly and interact with me and all that fun stuff. All right, thanks for watching and have a great day.